Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 79 degrees, with a low dipping to 55.4 degrees, so expect a comfortable fall day with mild evenings ahead. Coming up, we'll break down the factors driving the U.S. national debt to a staggering $38 trillion in such a short span, and uncover the reasons the FDA keeps quiet about tainted manufacturing sites supplying generic medications. Plus, other key stories on politics, health, and more. All this and more on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, folks. We start today with a trillion-dollar headline that's got economists seeing red. The U.S. national debt has just blasted past $38 trillion, hitting a record during this ongoing government shutdown. Joining me to unpack this fiscal fiasco is our Washington correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, walk us through what happened.
Thanks, Grace. You're right, this is a massive marker. According to the Treasury Department's daily debt-to-the-penny data, as reported by the Associated Press, the gross federal debt crossed $38 trillion on October 21st, reaching precisely $38,19,813,354,700.26. That's the first time ever, and it came just 2 days ago, confirmed amid the shutdown chaos.
Wow, that number is staggering. For our viewers tuning in, what's debt to the penny? And how did we get here so fast from $37 trillion?
Debt to the penny is the Treasury's real-time tally of the nation's borrowing, updated every business day to show the exact debt figure down to the cent. It's like a national checkbook balance. As for the speed, the Associated Press, in coverage picked up by the Indianapolis Business Journal on October 22nd, called this the fastest $1 trillion surge outside the pandemic era. We hit $37 trillion back on August 11th, so in just over 2 months, we added that full trillion. That's twice the average growth since 2000 and nearly 5 times quicker than in the 2000s. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a nonpartisan watchdog group, notes it's been piling up at about $69,713.82 per second over the past year.
Pun intended, but that's a debt that's snowballing out of control. What pushed it over the edge, especially with the shutdown?
Absolutely, Grace, it's like fiscal fast forward. The shutdown, triggered by congressional fights over spending bills and Affordable Care Act subsidies, has frozen things up, delaying decisions and spiking borrowing needs. Newser's article today, October 23rd, titled "Bad News on the National Debt," explains how it disrupts the economy and adds restart costs for federal programs. Treasury's monthly Treasury statement for fiscal year 2025, ending September 30th, showed a whopping $1.8 trillion deficit for the year, with August alone at $360 billion short. Fox Business and CBS News covered this in real time, tying it to Trump administration moves like extending the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, boosting military and border spending, and launching the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, inspired by Elon Musk to slash waste, though critics say it's not curbing the overall climb.
DOGE, huh? More bark than bite on the budget so far. Break down the main culprits for the average family wondering how this hits their wallet.
For everyday folks, think of it as the government's credit card bill coming due. Key drivers, per Treasury's debt to the penny and monthly Treasury statement reports cited by Seeking Alpha and the Economic Times, include persistent deficits where spending outpaces revenues by $1.8 trillion last year. About 80% of the recent jump, or $816 billion, is debt held by the public, like bonds we sell to investors, with 20% intragovernmental money owed between federal funds. A big chunk stems from unwinding extraordinary measures after the July 4th. One Big Beautiful Bill Act raised the debt ceiling by $5 trillion to $41.1 trillion, leading to catch-up borrowing of about $1.7 trillion, including refilling the Treasury General account to $850 billion. The CRFB attributes over half the August to October surge to that. Then there's tax policies. The 2017 cuts have added $1.5 to $2 trillion to deficits over a decade, per Congressional Budget Office estimates, and the new bill could tack on $4.1 trillion through 2035, as analyzed by the Tax Policy Center.
And spending, entitlements, defense, all adding up?
Spot on. Social Security and Medicare, growing with our aging population, ate up big chunks automatically. Defense hit $917 billion, but net interest payments topped it at $970 billion for the first time, per the monthly Treasury statement and CBO's February baseline. That's 17% of the budget, more than the Pentagon, and it's the fastest-growing expense, projected to hit $1 trillion next year and $1.8 trillion by 2035, or 4.1% of GDP. The Peter G. Peterson Foundation says interest alone could total $14 trillion over the next decade, up from $4 trillion in the last. Plus, the shutdown's effects, as CEO Michael Peterson told Newser, are like pouring gas on the fire, inflating borrowing.
The impact sounds scary. How does this $38 trillion affect the economy long term?
It's a $1 trillion headache for sure, Grace. The debt-to-GDP ratio is now over 120%, higher than World War II levels per CRFB. As Kent Smetters from the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Wharton budget model told the Associated Press in interviews aggregated by Newser, it erodes purchasing power, risking inflation and higher costs for mortgages, car loans, even credit cards, since government borrowing crowds out private investment, hurting wages and jobs. The Government Accountability Office's October fiscal outlook warns of another $10 trillion by 2030, with deficits averaging 7% of GDP. Regionally, as the Indianapolis Business Journal noted, it strains states like Indiana, impacting manufacturing giants. CBO projects debt at 180% of GDP by 2050, potentially halving economic opportunities for future generations. Investor confidence could wane, leading to credit downgrades, as Deloitte and Investopedia analyses suggest, even threatening the dollar's global reserve status.
Projections are grim. What's next, with the shutdown dragging on?
CBO's October updates forecast debt held by the public at 99% of GDP in 2024, climbing to 116% by 2034, with overall debt at $50.7 trillion then. GAO sees annual deficits at $2.7 trillion by 2035. Policy-wise, Congress is stalled, but House Republicans want funding through November 21st, that's 29 days from now, at current levels, while Democrats push ACA extensions costing $350 billion more per CBO. Bipartisan calls for a fiscal commission are rising, like the CRFB's Break Glass plan, suggesting $2 in cuts per $1 new spending, and a deficit reduction surtax to hit 3% of GDP. DOGE targets 2026 cuts, but as PGPF statements decry, the shutdown milestone screams negligence without reforms.
Eye-opening stuff, Ethan. Thanks for breaking down this debt dilemma.
Anytime, Grace.
And now, our second story of the morning. A stunning investigation from ProPublica, co-published with NPR Today, reveals how the Food and Drug Administration is keeping secrets about contaminated factories making our generic drugs. Joining me to break this down is our health reporter, Chloe. Chloe, what is the big picture here?
Thanks, Grace. ProPublica's 14-month probe, titled, quote, "Is your medication made in a contaminated factory? The FDA won't tell you," end quote, uncovers what they call a secret gamble by the FDA on public health. 9 out of every 10 prescriptions in the United States are generics, many from factories in India and China. Yet, the agency hides critical details about violations like mold, contaminated water, and even pigeons pooping on sterile equipment.
That sounds alarming. For folks at home not familiar with generics, can you explain why this secrecy matters so much?
Absolutely. Generics are cheaper versions of brand-name drugs, approved by the FDA as equally safe and effective. But according to ProPublica's reporting, the FDA redacts names of specific drugs from public inspection reports, claiming they protect confidential commercial information, or CCI, under federal laws. This means doctors, pharmacists, and patients cannot trace if their pills come from unfit factories. Reporters Debbie Senzaper and Megan Rose even tried tracking a common cholesterol drug like atorvastatin and hit dead ends due to those blackouts.
So how does the FDA justify letting these risky drugs into the country anyway?
They grant exemptions, basically internal passes, to over 20 foreign factories, mostly in India, allowing shipments of more than 150 drugs or ingredients since 2013. ProPublica obtained this through Freedom of Information Act requests and a lawsuit. The reason? To prevent shortages, as outlined in FDA policy guides. But critics say it's lax, ignoring warnings like pathogens in water for injectable meds or urine pooling near sterile production.
Give us a real-world example from the report, Chloe. What's one factory that's emblematic of this issue?
Take Sun Pharma's Halol plant in Gujarat, India. It got hit with an import alert in 2015 for failures like not investigating bacterial contamination or disinfecting properly. Yet, according to ProPublica and NPR, the FDA let them ship at least 5 drugs from there, including vecuronium bromide, a muscle relaxant for surgeries, and doxorubicin, a key chemotherapy agent. All to avoid shortages, even after later inspections found ongoing problems with sterile handling.
And the human impact? Are there numbers showing harm from these exempted drugs?
It's concerning but not fully proven yet. ProPublica's analysis of FDA files shows over 8,000 adverse event reports linked to these drugs from 2010 to early 2025, including about 70 hospitalizations and 9 deaths. These came through the FDA's MedWatch system, where anyone can report issues. For instance, a generic immunosuppressant for transplant patients had dissolution problems, potentially speeding kidney failure. Complaints hit antibiotics, antidepressants, cancer therapies, and more. Experts note causality is tough without big studies, like comparing to normal rates, and the FDA says many reports might be from patient conditions, not defects.
This builds on earlier work, right? What else did ProPublica release?
Yes, this follows their August 12, 2025 article in the RX Roulette series, which first listed those 150-plus exempted products publicly, info the FDA had hidden. You can check ProPublica.org for it, cross-referencing with the FDA's National Drug Code Directory using numbers on your pill bottles. But even that rarely reveals exact factory spots, unlike Europe's regulators.
Speaking of that, how does the U.S. stack up internationally?
ProPublica compares it unfavorably to the European Medicines Agency and the UK's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. Those groups also bend rules for shortages but demand more transparency, like public databases and less redaction of drug names and violation reports. It's like the FDA's playing hide-and-seek with our medicine cabinet, while Europe keeps the lights on for safety.
Any calls for change coming from this?
Definitely. The report has sparked talk of congressional probes, similar to past FDA scandals. ProPublica's ongoing lawsuit pushes for unredacted lists. NPR highlighted patient stories, especially for vulnerable folks like cancer patients. For now, it's a wake-up call. Or should I say a pill of truth, urging better sourcing transparency from pharmacies.
Thanks, Chloe, for unpacking this eye-opening investigation and all its gritty details. Viewers, stay safe with your meds.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. North Carolina's lines are getting a hard right rewrite. In Raleigh, the GOP-led legislature approved a congressional map explicitly engineered to flip the 1st District, now held by Democrat Don Davis, into red territory. Analysts say the makeover moves the likely U.S. House split from 10-4 to 11-3 in favor of Republicans. State House leaders said the quiet part aloud, vowing to elect 11 Republicans, aligning with President Trump's calls to redraw for a bigger House cushion before the 2026 midterms. Democrats decry what they call a partisan gerrymander that dilutes black voters, power in the Northeast, and will sue. With the governor unable to veto, The map becomes law, and candidate filing for 2026 starts in December. District lines drawn, battle lines too. Canada is pivoting from, oh, say, can you see, to we, the exporters. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a bid to double exports beyond the U.S. over the next decade, seeking an extra $300 billion in trade. He warned American tariffs are putting a deep freeze on investment, icier than a February in Flin Flon, and chilling jobs in autos, steel, and lumber. Calling the U.S. relationship changed for good, Carney previewed a diversification drive ahead of a November 4th budget, with a renewed courtship of global heavyweights India and China. It's a pre-game plan for the 2026 CUSMA review, with Ottawa signaling that reducing reliance on one customer is the cost of doing business. The PM cautioned the shift will take some sacrifices and some time, a long haul on a new trade route. In Brussels, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky landed for a European Council summit where leaders are expected to pass the hat, pass the ammo, and tighten the screws on Moscow. The agenda includes sustained military and financial aid, a fresh EU sanctions round targeting Russian LNG, and coordination with new U.S. penalties on major oil firms. A marquee item: a plan to use profits from €180 minus $300 billion in frozen Russian central bank assets to back a reparation loan, covering Kyiv's needs into 2026-27. Belgium and others voice legal qualms, but Council President Antonio Costa welcomed Zelensky, pledging support as long as necessary. Fresh from visits to Norway and Sweden, Zelensky is hunting for longer-range defense deals and shorter timelines. Courts are refereeing the boundaries of the commander-in-chief. The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court for an emergency green light to deploy National Guard troops in the Chicago area, after an appeals court upheld a block. A separate federal judge in Chicago extended an injunction indefinitely, pausing any Guard deployment in Illinois pending final judgment or high court action. Out west, a Ninth Circuit panel said Trump likely can federalize Oregon's Guard for Portland, though a lower court order still bars deployment. With challenges also bubbling in California, rulings could redraw the map of the Insurrection Act and the federal-state balance. An emergency decision could drop any day. At the Pentagon, the press seats have flipped from beat to breach. After major outlets balked at new rules, a freshly seated core leans right, featuring Gateway pundit, Lindell TV, The National Pulse, Turning Point USA's Frontlines, and Timcast. The access policy, requiring reporters not to solicit or publish unauthorized information even if unclassified, prompted a walkout from organizations including the AP, The New York Times, The Washington Post, CNN, Fox News, and Newsmax. Critics call it prior restraint with training wheels. The Pentagon says it's bypassing mainstream media lies to reach Americans directly. The result: a seismic shift in who questions the generals, and how the public, Congress, and allies hear the bugle. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.